I got to open up 3 new areas on my mission. So areas where missionaries haven't been before. I guess one of them, missionaries had been there before, but they were taken out, and it had been like 10 years or so since the last elders were since me and my companion were put back in there. And I remember being really nervous to open up a new area. Missionaries have never been there before. There's no area book. There's no records. But going back to sort of the friendliness of the people, it's surprising how much easier it was. Because tracting in Ghana is so easy. You can talk to anybody and everybody, and they're so nice to you most of the time. And also, because it's so hot, people aren't inside very often. Everybody's outside all the time. So you can just walk down the street and you can just talk to everybody, and you'll always find someone to teach. You'll always find someone to talk to, and that's a really big blessing to be in Ghana. There's one area I served in. It's called Kenyasi, and it was sort of it was outside of the Kumasi city limits, but it was relatively close to Kumasi, the capital city of our mission. And I had a new companion. He was from Togo, and in Togo they speak French and Ewe, which is their native language, and he didn't speak English. And so here I was in this new area. Missionaries had never been there before, and there wasn't a single member on record in our whole area. Inactive, active, nobody. So we were literally starting just like a blank page, and we had to get them to come in to Kumasi to the next closest branch, which was probably about a 20-minute trotro ride, which trotro is like a public transportation. It's like a giant nasty van that they just cram a bunch of people inside. Anyway, that was a really challenging part of my mission, to having a companion I couldn't communicate with because I had to teach him English, and also being in an area that there wasn't any members to help. And I remember getting on a trotro, and the mate is the guy who takes the money in the trotro. The mate asked us where we wanted to go, and I just told him to take us to the last stop, because they have routes that they drive, and I just said, take us to the last stop. And so we stayed on this trotro, and we got off at the last stop. He told us this is the last place, so we got off, and we walked back towards the way we came, like back home, because we'd never been there before, and we were trying to figure out what it was. And I was so nervous, but I knew that I needed to set a good example because I was training, and I just told my companion, well, I signed to my companion. We did a lot of acting in the beginning of our companionship before he really could understand English very well. I was telling him and showing him that we needed to talk to everybody that we saw. And so we just started walking back down that same road we came, and we just talked to everybody, and it was so relieving, just remembering how kind Ghanaians are. And even though you're a stranger and they don't know you, they'll talk to you. And it makes missionary work that much easier, because mission has stresses of its own. Every mission has its own tough things that has to go through. Each missionary themselves has to go through something, but it was such a huge blessing to just talk to people in an unknown place. Missionaries have never been there before. People have never seen the church before. They've never heard the church name before. And it's a very interesting experience to be a part of that, to feel like sort of like Christ's apostles going to the Gentiles for the first time, teaching these people. I often thought about like Paul preaching in Athens about like the unknown God, telling them about some God that they've never heard before, that these people never heard of before, and trying to help them understand Christianity and things like that. And in this place, I mean, granted they were Christians, they knew Jesus Christ and stuff, but they never heard about Joseph Smith or the Book of Mormon or anything, and so it was cool to get that experience, to be the first. We were the source of their first time ever hearing the gospel, the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. And that's one of the greatest blessings about being in the Kumasi mission, is it's constantly expanding because we have so much room to grow. Whereas the other missions in Ghana are pretty confined now to their locations, even though I'm sure they are opening up new villages and things. That's something I'll never forget. I was there for only 2 transfers in Kenyasi, and I remember being really bummed. We had like 11 really strong investigators, and didn't have a baptism my whole time in Kenyasi. And I remember feeling pretty bummed about it, that here I was opening this new place, working so hard, and not seeing the fruit that I was hoping to get, or I thought I would get, opening up this new area. Because like getting people to church was so hard. They didn't have money for transportation, and the church was far away and things like that. But the cool thing about missionary work is hearing about what happens after. Hearing about things after you leave or after the fact. And within that next transfer, after I'd left, 9 of the 11 investigators we had got baptized within that next transfer. And hearing stuff like that, it doesn't get much better than that. To know that you're a part of that, or that you had a role to play. And that's when I learned something really interesting or really important about mission, is that numbers don't mean anything really, but being a part of it. Because it's all about being in the right place at the right time. If you get people, you do. If you don't, you don't. But I mean, just as equally special as those who I taught and was able to baptize, hearing about people after the fact who finally came around and who finally got baptized. I had just as much joy in hearing about those people as I did with the people that I was with, and that I got to go through all of it with them. Because you get really attached to investigators, especially these Ghanaian people are just so sweet. And they become your best friends on the first day, and it never changes. I had a few experiences like that. One of the women we taught in this area, Kenyasi, she was a university student, but she was older, coming back to get her degree. And we started teaching her, and she told us that she had a Muslim husband, and that he was raising their children Muslim, but she was a Christian. And I guess before I go into this story, it's important to know in Ghana, those are the 2, Christians and Muslim. Tons of Muslims, especially in the north. Kumasi has so many Muslims. Not Kumasi itself. Well, Kumasi does have a lot of Muslims. It's mostly Christian, but the Kumasi mission, pretty much as soon as you get out of the Ashanti region and the Brangahafo region, everything north of that is predominantly Muslim. But Ghana is well known for its peacefulness between Muslims and Christians, because in most of the world they don't coexist very well, and it's the opposite in Ghana. The Muslims and Christians coexist very well. And I think also, I mentioned earlier a city, it's called Tamale. It's up in northern region in Ghana, and it's got to be like 90% Muslim. But we have 8 missionaries there now. And I heard from my mission president that the brethren in Salt Lake, they were really interested in this part of the world, because it was one of the few places where Muslims and Christians coexisted so peacefully. And as we all know, most Islam countries, there's no missionaries there. And so it's been an interesting learning experience for our mission, but also for the church, as they've looked specifically at this city, Tamale, and seen sort of the success that missionaries have had amongst the majority of Islam being practiced in that city. And so you get a lot of intermarriage, Christian, Muslim marriages. And so this woman we were teaching, she was one of them, and we taught her for a while, and she told us that she wanted to send the missionaries to her husband. So we got her husband's phone number, and we gave his number to the missionaries there, and they didn't contact him before our next visit. And we got there, and she chastised us for not. She said, "I called my husband, and the missionaries haven't been there yet. Why have the missionaries been there yet?" And she got in our case on it. And I was mad because the other missionary should have called him by now, because it had been a few days. And so I made sure to call him, and they got in contact with him finally. But a couple weeks later, I was transferred out of the area, and I got a call from the mission president's wife about 6 months later, informing me that our mission president just finished interviewing this woman that we had taught and her husband, that he was converting from Islam to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that they were getting baptized. Them and their 3 children were all above the age of 8. And that was just one of those times of feeling like, even though I missed a lot of the teaching, I think we taught her lesson 1. And, like, we got through the Book of Mormon, and that was about it, and I got transferred. But to think that I was a part of something greater, that she and her husband and their kids were able to meet up with the missionaries and be united and be able to get baptized together. And our mission president's wife kept saying, or told me, that they kept talking about how excited they were to go to the temple. And the missionaries had taught them all about the temple, and that a year from now they would go. And then that was what was really important to them, was go to the temple and get settled as a family. And it's things like that that you just can't, there's experiences like that that you can't really experience anywhere else.